Well, it looks like we are live on Facebook here. Beautiful Monday morning. I'm happy that everybody's here joining me. Thanks so much for checking in on the series here, which is 7 steps to selling, especially selling now in a time of instability. It's a crazy time, and one of the most important factors for people to make a buying decision, which is really what selling is about. Selling's not about doing something to somebody else. It's about helping them buy from you. If you're the right solution, if you're the right provider. And if you are, it's a full court press. Let's get in there and help them because you're the best person to help them. I'd rather have somebody buy from me where I know the quality of service or product that I provide than from somebody else that's unknown. And that's why I really believe in sales, as they call it. But remember, sales is about helping people buy. That's what this whole series is about. This series, by the way, is sponsored by Home Energy Solutions. You can find them on the web at hespv.ca. They wanted me to put together this series because they, of course, are trying to support their solar panel and roofing clients out there. They're a distributor for solar products. But listen, this topic is for all of us: cabinet makers, landscapers, roofers, people that do pool installs, or even HVAC. Because trades is trades, and the people that we're selling to are people. So let's treat them like people. Now we need to follow a process here. There's a 7-step selling process. And that selling process exists no matter where you are in the world. I know because I've used this all over the world. And I've trained people on it all over the world, and they've had success all over the place. So I'm going to walk you through it here in this series. This is series number 2. For those of you who are just joining us, I want to give you an overview. Each of these individual pieces is, and I'm looking at my notes here if you see me looking off screen. Each of these individual pieces has an outline, because I put together a system for this as well. No surprise. So the system goes like this for you. In each of these 7 steps, we're going to be talking about the goal for the step. We're going to be talking about the best outcome that you're looking for in that step. And then I'm also going to be sharing trust tips with you. So what are trust tips? Trust tips are the things that you do, the actions you take, the things you don't do that help people understand that you are to be trusted, that your company is competent and qualified, that you are a good and honest and ethical provider and supplier, that you are a person who takes things seriously and will follow through on promises. Those are the kinds of trust tips that people are looking for. Now, it's easy to think about this as just a homeowner-based thing, but really this applies even if you're providing commercial services, working with GCs on TIs. It doesn't matter what kind of trade you're doing, this applies to all of those. I'm also going to be aiming this for you at the affluent decision maker. So what's affluent? Affluent is wealthy, and wealthy stands for people who can afford what you are doing. Now, they might still have some questions for you about how much your estimate is, and that's fine. But we want to be dealing with people who can and will pay for your services. And you want to deal with a decision maker because that's the person who's going to, as we used to say in the old days, write the check. Checks have gone the way of the dodo bird now with all of this social distancing, but you know what I mean. It's the person who can release payment to you for the services. And then I'll also tell you at all times where we are in the 7 steps process. Today we're in step 2, which is the qualifying stage. Previous to this was prospecting, and then the next one's going to be appointment setting. So you got to listen to this whole series so you understand how this all goes together. If you have salespeople in your company, for sure, share this with them. Okay? All right. Now remember, this whole thing is to remove the randomness from your sales process, and that's one of the stresses that business owners have about selling, regardless of what the economy's like, is that sales can be a random process. And what that leads to is you guys working way too hard. That's the reason you're stressed out and you're chasing every single deal and you're up all hours and you're missing, your kids' games and homework. Games. I haven't taken my kids to a game in a long time. They haven't had a practice in a while. But under normal circumstances, that's what's happening. You're missing those because you're late working. So let's talk about the qualifying stage. So the qualifying stage, the goal of this stage is to make sure that this is a real decision maker. So somebody who's actually the decision maker, who can and will make a decision, okay? And that they want what you build, make, sell, install, and they want what you have, okay? Now, there's 2 important people in the buying process. There's the decision maker and there's the influencer. So you have to make sure you're not confusing the two. And you've been caught by this, I've been caught by this, when I went to a homeowner's house. For instance, one of my companies in the past was a painting company, a home painting company. I've also had a home handyman business, and I also had a Christmas light company called the Yo Ho Ho Light Co. Some of you have heard about that before. Anyways, let's talk about the painting situation. I go to a house, and I thought that in the particular story I'm thinking of, the wife was the decision maker. And so I sold to her, I made the appointment with her, I went there and went through everything, and at the very end of the presentation, when I said, here's how much it's going to cost to paint your house, here's how much it is to do one coat, here's how much it is to do two coats, etc., she looked at me and she said, Dominic, this is great. I mean, really, this is great. I'm going to talk to my husband. He and I both agreed that we would look at this together after you've gone. And I realized then that I had been caught in their plan, which was to never have the husband available so that they could always push off the decision. And it took me a very, very long time to eventually get that deal. It was a lot of work. On the other side, if I did my work up front and made sure that I knew who both decision makers were, or who the decision maker and who the influencer was, early in the sales process, I would get the deal right away, and I had to have my crew painting sometimes within 3 or 4 days, a week, no problem. But when I didn't do my work and make sure that I knew who the decision maker and who the influencer was on an account, then that's where I got in trouble. So the next time you're in a sales process, next time you're talking to a new prospect, ask them, who other than you is going to be wanting to make a decision on this? And you can ask them any questions you want. Who's going to want to talk about color? Or in the case of solar panels, who's going to want to talk about access to the roof and where you want the cables running? I want to make sure everybody in the family's involved who, along with you, wants to make this decision. And then when you find out who that other person is, that's either the decision maker themselves or the influencer. And remember that to me, the decision maker is the person who can cut a check without talking to the other person. The influencer is the person who talks to the decision maker. And it can be any combination depending on where you are. But the more and better you understand that, the easier it is for you to do the deals you need. And it helps you establish trust because you're a professional. You're following a system. And we know that people who follow a system have more consistent work, right? You're putting out more consistent work, and I trust that. I trust somebody who follows a system. That's what I want. We all crave systems. We crave that predictability. So I want you to be able to tell me what the steps are that we're going through in the sales process, what the steps are in the installation process. That's how you build trust, okay? Anyways, the best outcome you can get during the qualifying stage is where you're asking a lot of great questions, not doing all the talking. You're asking a ton of great questions, and you're getting really good, real information from people. Remember to use your open-ended questions in this stage. So open-ended questions are questions that cannot be answered with a yes, no, or number, right? So how many sides to your house? 4. Okay, that's a closed question, right? An open-ended question is, if you had unlimited time and money, what would this solar panel installation look like? Or what color would you want the house to be if there was no homeowner association restrictions? Those kinds of things, those are open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions can lead you down a series of answers that take you to a no decision, and you really don't want those, okay? One of the trust tips that I want you to put in place, and if you've got a pen and paper, write this down. What are the trust tips I can give you for the qualifying stage? So trust tips, again, are those kinds of things that help people understand that you're trustworthy, that you've got a process and a system. So really, one of the easiest things to do is to make a simple promise during this stage that you can easily follow up with. So you say, I'm going to send you something right after this meeting. So in the case of cabinet makers and architecture mill workers, you've heard me talk about this before, you'll use something called a space planner guide. In the case of the solar industry and roofing, you might want to talk about, the sun trajectory paperwork that you have to figure out where their house is situated for the maximum solar impact. Every industry's got their thing, but you want to send them something that they do a tiny little bit of homework and get it back to you, right? So if you're selling hot water systems, you might say, I'm going to send you a brief questionnaire. Can you ask everybody in the house if they would like the water in the house hotter, cooler, or if it's just right? Go ahead and ask everybody and then let me know. And so you just get that answer back. It's a very simple answer. It's a very simple question, but you've set out a step that you want them to do. They've done that piece of homework, and now they're engaged in the process with you. So that's an important trust tip. It can seem really minor. It's easy to skip. So why do it? Well, the reason you want to do it is because these are times of instability. These are times when I know that if you're checking the little details before we even have a deal, you're going to check the details after. So it's a really important step. So that's the qualifying stage. In the process of qualifying, there's 4 ingredients you want to look for. Now, these are really important. And the reason they're important is they're going to come up again later in the process when it's time to do or not do the deal. And those 4 ingredients are this. They are budget, need, timing, and trust. So those are the 4 areas that you're going to get questions about. Budget, how much does this cost? Need, do I need this? Timing, why now? And trust, why you? So inside of those 4 questions, if you do your homework, you're going to be unstoppable in the sales process. So think about the worst question you can get about budget, about how much this costs. What's the worst question somebody can ask you about how much this costs? Go ahead and write that down. Think about the worst question. That can be the gut buster question, I call it. The one question somebody can ask you that would stop you dead in your tracks about how much your system costs, your process costs, your installation costs, your build costs. What's the one question they can ask you that's the worst? That's budget. Do the same thing for need. What's the worst question somebody could ask you about need? Why do I even need a solar system install? Why do I need a hot water tank? You might think those are dumb questions, but they're only dumb in your head. What is it that's important to the person making the buying decision? Why do I need this? Why do I need a smaller hot water tank? Why do I need an inline hot water tank? Why don't I need an old-fashioned hot water tank like I grew up with, like my dad's got, like it's at my grandparents' house? Why would I need something different? That's a need question, right? So we've got budget, need, then we've got timing. Timing is why now. Why is now the best time to make the decision? I mean, obviously you and I know that right now is the best time for a homeowner to make a decision to use you as a contractor because you got nothing but time. There's a lot of people saying no or waiting. So if you've got an account right now, a client who needs work done, I mean, you always do great work anyways, but right now you have even more time and effort to put into that, and you're even a little bit more motivated to do your best for that client. It's a perfect time to be working with you, right? So we've got budget, we've got need, we've got timing, and then we've got trust. They're going to be asking questions about trust. Now, trust is who else have you worked with? Have you cleared this with the homeowners association, which is called an HOA, or in some areas it's called a strata council. That's when you've got a row of townhomes and there's a volunteer group of that looks after the management contract for all the maintenance. You know, have you cleared it with them? What are the trust elements that they're going to ask you about? Those are really, really important. You can see why the qualifying stage is so important and why I want you to be on top of it. Remember that during this stage, you want to tell them that you're choosing them as much as they're choosing you. So you want to have them understanding that you are a busy contractor. You consider which kind of clients you're going to bring on, and there's a two-way decision going on here as to whether you're going to work with them, because you don't have to work with everybody. Just like they don't have to choose you. Nobody's being forced to work with you, and you're not being forced to work with them. That should be pretty clear on the table in a nice and polite way, but I think people need to understand that you're a busy contractor who does serious work, and you only work with the very best people who want the very best service and quality. All right. The other thing you want to make sure in the qualifying stage is, because appointment setting is coming next, right? So we've got a process going, right? We did the prospecting where we found this ideal person, and now we're qualifying and we're asking a bunch of great questions. We're listening very carefully. I want to make sure that when we eventually have the face-to-face meeting, all decision makers are present. That's really important. That's why we want to find out who those decision makers are. If you can't have all decision makers there, don't go on that meeting. You're just wasting your time. All decision makers have to be there. Otherwise, you are wasting your time. And then make sure that if you have any little tiny bit of homework, like I talked about the space planner guide, or surveying everybody in the house about what your hot water tank, what your hot water needs to be. In the case of the solar industry, get everybody in the house to list all of the electrical tools they use in the house. What are the things they use in the house? You're going to get the kids saying, every night I plug in my iPad and my phone, I have my clock radio going, I have my stereo going, I have this and that. You want to get a list of those things from each and every person in the house. And then that gives you a chance to have that open communication, to find out more about the application, and to do the best job you can. All right, let's leave that here. I think we've covered off quite a bit on the qualifying stage. Remember, in our next episode, in this next installment, we're going to be talking about appointment setting. Really a critical stage, because if you can't get the appointment with the right people within the right amount of time, in the right headspace of the client, you're not going to get that deal. Other competitors that you're up against, they will get that deal, because if they're better at appointment setting, they're going to crush you all the time. I want you to be the one that's much better at appointment setting, so you crush them. All right. So keep checking in here. Thanks so much for checking in, folks. I really appreciate the time that you take to check in here, and I do my best to keep this valuable. Have a great day. We'll talk to you all soon.